Colleges OKC, and really happy to be here today to talk about a really important topic that kind of hits home for me personally. So I hope you guys have some great takeaways. Before we get started, we're going to do our usual gig. How many of you, before we get started, how many of you are new? How many of this is the first time you've been here? Okay, we got a few. Fantastic. Glad you're here. Thanks for coming. We do have a survey that we ask for you to fill out, and we would love for you to do that. Today, we're doing something a little different. If you fill a survey out, you're actually going to be entered into a drawing for the gift. Now, if you fill it out and you don't want to do the gift and you win, you can just decline and we'll go to another person. So don't let that keep you from filling out your survey. But we would love for you to have that opportunity to do that for free. It's a $227 value, so I hope you will take advantage of it. It's a good deal. So I'm going to invite my beautiful friend, Miss Marilyn Olson, up to get us kicked off. Thank you, Marilyn. You can go up there, sure.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. And for those of you that are new or have forgotten, because it's been a month, right? So we meet every month. We always begin with a pledge and a prayer because we are grateful to be here. We're grateful to be vertical and in this great state. And we're grateful to be in this country because we have freedoms that many others do not. So if you'd stand with me, please, and face the flag. There are many flags in this room. You could get it from any direction. I'm going to do this one right over here, all right? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for air to breathe and for friends to be with. How fortunate we are. And we want to start this day with gratitude and end the day with gratitude, because that's the way you designed us. Lord, we pray that you would give us wisdom in this hour, that we would listen to our moderator and to the presenters on the panel, and take home something to take action to help ourselves and someone else. In your name we pray. Amen. We're going to try a mindful minute. I thought you might be interested to know that long ago there was a book called Think and Grow Rich. Some of you may have read it. It's still true. And we're here today to think and to grow rich because it takes being that intentionally. So just because you're a certain age, I met Amy over here who is recently retired, and she said she's stopping learning. Did you, Amy? No. That's why she's here, is to continue learning, because we want to do lifelong learning. I thought you might find it interesting. This book is called Age Wave. It was printed in 1989. You remember that century? And it says on the cover, if you expect to live to the year 2000, you need to read this book. Well, this book predicted what we're doing here today. That people are going to be living longer and living well because they're going to be doing it intentionally. And I congratulate you for being here, because that's really what it's all about. But it's a do-it-yourself job. So the mindful moment today is this. Do it yourself, and then bring someone along with you. Because, you know, we should be helping each other, right? And that's really the way to make the world a great place. Julie, what's next? Okay, we're so grateful for our sponsors here today. We won't go through every one, but I want to tell you that if you have not visited every education partner, you should do that when we leave today, because they have information that you may have not even seen before, even when you come every month. For example, we have a new partner over here, Community Care, see in the green, yeah? And we have Connie and Time for Living, Connie Williams. Many of you may know her, but this is the first time that she's here. And then we have some new people here at the various tables. So, let's see, I know this is Doug's first time here, right? Doug is a new agent with Navigating Medicare. So there's always new things. In fact, just like this book said, things keep changing. You know, from 2000, I mean, in my world, that's not that long ago, but things keep changing. We've got to keep up in order to be relevant. And so I would encourage you to visit with each of the education partners around the table and all. Get information that they have. Julie, what's next? That sounds good. Is that you? Okay, here's Mike.
Thank you to Marilyn. She did a great job putting this on. And for those of you who are not familiar, Positive Aging is brought to you by Villages OKC, and we hope that you will get familiar with this. You see some folks that have connected buttons on. They are members, and this is a member organization. And while our partners are the ones that make this happen, we also have a lot of volunteers and staff that also make this happen. And we would love to get connected with you and share a little bit more about what we do and who we are. The Village movement is a national, global phenomenon, and we've had one right here in Oklahoma City. So we're not usually first for a lot of things, but we are in this, so we hope that you guys will come by and learn a little bit more about villages. I'll also share with you, I mentioned the gift workshop. For those of you who are not familiar, this is a 4-week class. If any of you are familiar with Financial Peace, how many of you are familiar with that? Financial Peace University? Okay. For those of you that are, it is very similar to that. For those of you who are not, it is basically a 4-week workshop session, and every week you cover different topics. And they walk you through the things, some of which we're going to talk about today, on how to get things accomplished. Because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And this is an elephant, right? All that planning is an elephant. So, the gift is going to be something that we're going to give away one seat for, and that's for a household. So if you've got a spouse, the spouse can come too, or an adult child, or whoever you want to invite. All right. So, we do things a little different here. We resist normal. For those of you who've been here, you know this. For those of you who are new, this is our mantra. So, I need you guys to repeat this with me. This is the year I resist normal, because normal is dehydrated, irritated, constipated, frustrated, overstimulated, overscheduled, undernourished, underrested, inflamed, and totally stressed out. I resist normal. All right, so if we're going to resist normal, what are we going to do? This is our declaration. This is my best decade yet. I am a joyful, mature adult. I enjoy lifelong learning, planning, and serving. Today, I will find someone younger to encourage. I love my age. This is my best decade yet. So thanks for playing along with me. I hope you actually believe what you just stated, because it is an important thing, a shift in our thinking, right? All right. So our topic today is money matters. And I just want to say that this isn't just about how much money you have, right? It's about the plans that we have in place, or the plans we think we have in place. And if life throws something unexpected at us, that we've got a game plan, or at least it doesn't catch us completely off guard. So we're going to talk about the small gaps that can create big problems, all right? We do want to talk to our professionals about this. I certainly don't know everything, and if I'm really honest, I need to step back and do my own gift book and go back and look at where my gaps are, because we all have them, right? So we've got financial planning, we've got access to banking issues, we've got legal things, and that's why we've asked our wonderful panelists. So I'm going to ask them to come on up. So you guys come this way. And thank you to our panelists for being here today. You can sit down. We're so glad you're here. So we have Angela Vetrano with Edward Jones, and Angela has a unique background in that she was a nurse prior to being a financial planner. So we're going to have a different perspective for her, and I'm really grateful for that, for sure. Mary Williams is with First Bethany Bank, and we're grateful you're here today. She says she's the B team. I don't believe that's true. I think she's the A team. And then we have, thank you, and then we have Roberto. And Roberto is with Seda Law, and some of you may know Roberto. How many of you go to the Senior Living Truth Series? Have y'all seen him there before, right? So we're grateful that he made time for us today, and really what we were going to talk about is financial related, but so much of our finances are also tied to legal, right? So we want to make sure that what we think we have in place legally works, right? So that we're very grateful to you being here today, so thank you for that. Okay, so I told our guys up here that I would kind of poll the room real quick before we get started so that we kind of make sure that what we're sharing is what you guys need to hear. So, I need to know how many of you guys have done some advanced planning. You would say you've done some. Okay, that's good. All right, and that can be defined as a lot of things, right? It could be I've done burial, I've got a trust, I've talked to my kids, right? It could be a lot of different things. Who came with specific questions today? No one? One. One is honest. Very good. Well, if you came with specific questions, or even if just something comes to you as we're talking today, you see you have an index card on the table. If you'll write your question on that index card, if you don't see you have an index card, raise your hand, we'll get you one. But please write down your question, and we're going to have an opportunity at the end for questions and answers, okay? So you can pass those in, and we'll make sure we get those addressed. I will give this caveat. This is a very personal conversation, and sometimes our questions are very unique to our circumstance. So try to write a general question when you write your question. If you have a very specific question, these guys will be available afterwards, and you can visit with them one-on-one and then maybe make an appointment. Okay? All right. So I think we're going to get started. What I'd like to do is, I was going to say one other thing that I thought was really interesting. I saw this quote. If we don't have clear information available, what do? We fill in the blanks, right? So if we haven't communicated well, or we just make assumptions, we fill in the blanks and we may not have the right answers. So hopefully today, you guys are going to help us. All right. Well, let's get started. I'm going to sit up here with you folks, and we're going to start with Miss Angela. And we're going to talk about financial planning. Why don't you share a little bit about your background and how you came to be where you are, if you want to. Just a little quick information.
So I still am a registered nurse, and I worked in the hospital for 18 years. So I saw lots of different things. I saw good planning, I saw not so great planning, and I learned a lot about crisis management. I also realized that I wanted to work longer than probably physically I was going to be able to continue to do that job. So I needed to find a different plan. My mom worked for Edward Jones, and so I started investigating that opportunity, and I saw that my skills could kind of translate well and over. And so I made that leap, and I love it. I love working with families. I love helping them plan and think about things that most people don't. And I just bring a different perspective, coming from a different background. I haven't always been a finance person.
Right, and you have just helped us segue into some of my questions for you based on your background. So I appreciate that setting that stage. So when you were in your previous role, maybe, and now as a financial planner, when you have families that are scrambling, what are some of the things you find that they're scrambling for most often at the onset, maybe?
A lot of times it is paying the bills and knowing where things are.
Okay.
A lot of people throughout their life, they accumulate different things. We accumulate life insurance and then we set it aside. We may accumulate different workplace retirement plans, and people don't know that they could have combined all of those things together. So the biggest gap I see is that the person who knows where everything is now the person that someone's trying to step in for. So having a professional who knows where everything else is, even if it's not in my office or I don't manage it, I have the insurance company, I have the bank account information. I know I'm a second person who knows where everything is.
That's fantastic. Okay. And I'm going to share, because I think this is a good segue. Mary shared this with me, and this is something that First Bethany provides to their clients. It is a account transition checklist, and it basically, and you guys have this sitting at your table. And it lists everything that you've got direct deposits for and then automatic payments for. It's a great place to start. So even if you use a financial planner, filling something like this out is really great, because then you can just hand it to them, okay, this is what we know. This is what we already have written out. You've got spaces for other. There's things on there that maybe are just unique to you, some organization or club that you pay that comes out. I know my mom does Compassion International, right? And I know it comes out monthly. So those are things that you could also list on this sheet. So we wanted to make sure you had that as a worksheet you could take home. So thank you, Mary, for that. Thank you, Bethany, for taking care of your folks. That's good. Okay, so Angela, next question. I know we talked about this. You said that when an illness or an unexpected event occurs, one of the financial gaps happens to be paperwork or maybe that kind of thing. So can you talk a little bit about when you do meet, you don't just meet with the individual, do you? When you have a meeting with somebody that might become a client?
No, a lot of my practice is families, multiple generations. After the Secure Act in 2020, the game that the government kind of plays with us sometimes has changed. And so the way people inherit money now is not always the way that people accumulated their retirement assets while they were working, especially people who are retired now. So it's very important to understand and make sure that you have everything that you need for today and to live out your retirement years, and how that money is being distributed for tax purposes and also for inheritance purposes. Because when most people pass away, or when most people's parents pass away, as adults, we're usually in our highest income earning years. And so the way assets transition can cause a lot of tax and inheritance issues. And so just working through those, it can be complicated. I work with a lot of CPAs and estate attorneys that we make sure that everything is set up to transition the way you wanted it in the most efficient way. And there's not a right or wrong. There's a lot of personal decisions that go into that. So having somebody that you can talk through those things with, that you feel comfortable talking through those things, is very important, because the more we know, the more we can help.
That's great. I appreciate that. Did I lose my mic? There we go. Okay, so having one location, having maybe an individual, hopefully a professional, that can help make sure that the things that we've got financially are in one location and are organized in a way that it makes sense, and then also maybe addressing some concerns that we might have about that transition, and that it's going to happen the way it should and not just the way we think it's going to. I know you talked about blended families a little bit, and there's some complications there. Does that kind of fall into the same bucket? Is it there's certain rules and things like that need to be taken into consideration?
That blended families, there are different things. That's probably more Roberto's expertise,
right.
But definitely it's something that I bring up with my clients. I recently, about 2 years ago, I had worked with a couple for about 5 years, and then it had never come out that they actually were a blended family.
Oh, okay.
And we did not know that. It was something they didn't talk about. They'd been married for almost 40 years, but their children were, and so we had to do some different planning, and I thought I knew everything about them, and I learned something different.
Good, very good. And I know you made this comment, and I thought it was really great, because I know in my world I see this, that having a financial planner or professional help you is not for the wealthy. You don't have to be super wealthy or have a huge asset, allotment to work with a financial planner. Is that fair to say?
That is true.
Yeah.
Different advisors have different asset minimums or different niches that they work with, but you can find a professional who will work with you no matter what you do or don't have.
Yeah.
And it is not expensive.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And then I added on the slide, you'll see up here, guys, that confirming your outcomes upon death or incapacitation, and that actually comes from a personal aspect, we had my dad, when he became ill, he had a glioblastoma brain tumor. And it was a very fast situation. And my parents had thankfully done a lot of work. They had met with somebody like Roberto in the Dallas market, and they had a wonderful trust set up, and everything was great. But there were some holes. And so thankfully, because of the role that I play, I had an opportunity to visit with the attorney and said, okay, so if my mom needs me to help her do something at the bank because she wants to stay with my dad and not leave his side, do I have everything in place to do that? And he thought I did, but I at least had the forethought to go to the bank to make sure that they had what they needed on file, and they did not. So thankfully, we were able to address that before he was incapacitated to a point. But I wanted to make sure that you guys, if you have an idea of what you think is going to happen, ask the question, play it out, and do different scenarios. You know, if it's me, or if it's my husband, or if it's an adult child, maybe you've left everything to somebody that's preceded in death, and you didn't change things, right? So just make sure your outcomes are what you think they're going to be. And it's not just death. It could be incapacitation, right? Or it could be something like they'd gone on a world cruise and they were the one that was supposed to be responsible for paying the taxes for the house, and they're the only one on it, right? So it doesn't have to be death. It can be something else. So, okay, so we're going to move on a little bit. I think what I'd like to do is go to Miss Mary. Got you up next. Thank you for sitting in order. That was really great. All right. So, Mary, to the point I made about going to the bank, there is something that you guys offer for your clients. There's a form or something that you say that is really a good idea to have on file. What is that called at First Bethany? Do you remember us talking about that? Yeah.
So if you have a trust, you might not want your child to be a co-trustee because that can imply different things with different assets these people could tell you more about. But if you do have a trust, but you want them to be authorized to do business on behalf if you become incapacitated or something of that nature, we have what's called a deputy form. Basically, that means you're an authorized signer. Now, and that would go on if you were incapacitated or something like that. Now, every bank's going to be a little bit different, so I highly recommend that you go in and you talk to your banker. And if they don't seem like they know, then talk to the next person until you feel like you get a solid answer, because there's nothing worse than when we can't help a family when something has happened unexpectedly.
Right, right. Well, I was really glad that you mentioned that y'all have that form. My parents' bank did not. So I did have to be added as a trustee because they had their account wasn't a trust. But every bank is different, and every situation is different. So you got to ask, exactly right. And so I think we'll ask this question to you. What are some assumptions that people make about account access that don't always hold up in a crisis? Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it like if they had a power of attorney, would that allow them to just do what they need to do?
Well, a lot of people will come into that had a power of attorney, but the person has passed. That ceases when they pass.
So hold on. I want you to say that again. The power of attorney dies when the
person dies.
Okay.
So that's not enough. You've got to have things. They've got to be a payable on death. Or if you're private like me, and I'm sure Roberto will share more about this, I don't have just tons of assets yet in my life, but I'm working on building a trust because I don't want everyone to know my business. I was private when I was alive. I wanted to be private when I passed. So, I mean, there's just so many different options, but, you know, some different things will die when you personally die. A trust will not. Which I'm sure you'll share.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. That's perfect. I do want to talk a little bit about if somebody is a signer on an account, but they're not the primary on the account. How does that affect things?
If they're an owner, they're a joint owner,
No
it's
problem.
fine.
Okay.
If you're just an authorized signer, you're not an owner. So again, if that person passes, that could be an issue. But I will highly recommend that you talk to your legal counsel or your financial advisor, because in my family, my mom was one of 5, and my grandfather was in his 90s, and he said, "Oh, he's a good boy, he won't do anything wrong." So he added one of my cousins to his accounts. My mom and her siblings basically got nothing because he told, "Hey, this is what I want you to do to the grandson," but the grandson didn't do it. And legally, there was nothing that could be done.
Okay.
So think about that too.
Right, yeah, that's really good. So knowing who's listed on the accounts, understanding everyone being clear on roles, right, who does what, that's going to be really important. And then, having copies of documents, right, making sure you know where the documents are that you need to ask for. Go ahead.
Safe deposit boxes are a great place to put those. Make sure that you have a child or a trusted person that knows where the key is. They cannot get in while you're alive if they're not on the box. But then if they're a successor or something, once they bring the death certificate, usually the banks can work with them.
Yeah, I have a question for you. If I'm on my mom's bank account, does that make me on her access to her box?
No, that's a separate thing.
Okay. So, again, making sure that what we think we've got set up is what we actually have set up. And that's just go back through the process, right? All right, so Roberto, you're up. All right. So, we have talked about some things, and Mary mentioned some things, and so did Angela, that have some legal connections to stuff, right? What are some things that you think about that are disconnects when people think they have intended documents in place, but maybe they don't play out the way they think, right?
Definitely. And I think that the powers of attorney are one of them, right? Also realizing that there's 2 separate powers of attorneys, right? You've got your financial power of attorney and you have your medical power of attorney. And I think that a lot of people think that they're interchangeable. They're not. You have to have the specific language in there. But I think, to Mary's point, is I oftentimes will get people telling me, well, Mom passed away, but I'm the power of attorney, so I can do, sell the house. Well, that's not the case, right? And then that's when we're now getting into the probate court. The other one that I often hear about is, well, I've got my will, Mom passed away, I get everything through the will, and I'm like, that's great. You still have to go through probate court for that. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that will situation, that they think they're going to be able to avoid probate. And if you've ever been through probate, I would not recommend it. I've got a lot of horror stories that I can share, and then time permitting, I can definitely give you some. But I think those are probably the 2 biggest misconceptions I see.
Okay, that's really good. Just so we have a show of hands in the audience, how many of you are familiar with probate? Okay, a few, but not everybody. Okay, so Roberto, I'm going to have you maybe share a scenario. Let's say you have an individual who has a will. It's a very basic will. They have relatives, not a spouse. Let's say it's a single person. Okay, what does probate look like for that family after that person passes? Can you kind of describe what that process might look like for them?
All right,
or
so
some challenges?
Yeah, mom passes away. She had a will, left everything through 3 kids. Right, that's probably as simple as you can get a will. Normally, I'll get a call from one of the kids saying, I've got the will, and we need to sell the house, let's say. And depending on the house, the value of the estate, I can advise as to whether or not they're going to be able to do a short probate that's still 2 months, or a longer probate. If there's a mortgage on the house, do they want to sell the house through the probate or do they not? Right, so we're asking a lot of questions as to what they want done through the probate process. And then depending on what they want done, it could be short as 2 months. I have several probates that have been open for years. Right, I've got one probate that did not have a will situation, but it had a surviving girlfriend. And this is not specifically to the will, but I will mention it because this is as bad as one of the worst situations is it's out in Potawatomi County, and surviving girlfriend lived in the home. There was 2 boys, right? Everything I think he intended to give to the 2 boys, but come to find out, the surviving girlfriend supplied a fake will to the court, and we had to fight it. And it took us 6 months to prove to the court that the will was faked, right? She has now been charged with 3 felony counts. But in defending this, invalid will, this forged will, they spent tens of thousands of dollars. We did have to evict her from the property, and now she basically gutted the house. So not only did she take something that should have sold for a pretty decent amount, but because of the condition it was in, they had to sell it at a discount, basically, right? So when when planning is not done, those are some of the things that can happen. I had one probate where the estate was split 65 ways because there were no kids, no siblings, no parents, and it ended up that 65 people split what was left over.
Okay, so I have a question with that, and then I know Mary's got a question too.
Yes.
In that situation, who pays you? It comes out of
the estate,
your assets, right?
Right.
Okay.
Luckily, in both of these, there is going to be a little bit left over. Those 2 boys, are going to have to split what's left over. But it will come out of the estate if there's estate money, right? So in this situation, there was a bank account and a life insurance policy where our clients could pay us.
Yeah.
But let's say the only thing in the estate was the house, right? Some attorneys will say, hey, we'll get paid through the estate. I generally do ask the beneficiaries to pay for it, right? Just because a lot of people tend to, after you get legal help, they don't want to pay their invoices, right?
Right.
I unfortunately have to pay employees.
Right.
So I just run my business a little bit different, but
Sure.
that's generally where it comes from.
So Mary, you have questions?
I do, because we've seen this. When you have people, let's say you have a sole owner in a home, would you recommend, if they wanted it to go to those sons and they don't have a trust, to make it POD or a vehicle? Because I know you can do that through the county clerk. What would you suggest?
So one of the ways, and I think you're referring to the transfer on death deed, right? A lot of people want to do a transfer on death deed. The downside, it is a vehicle by which you can avoid probate, all right? Joint tenancy avoids probate. Those are two of the most common way that you can hold title to the real estate, to your home, right? And so we're specifically talking about homes right now. The thing about a transfer on death deed is that, let's say you leave it to your 2 kids, but one of them passes away, and now what? If you weren't clear, it could be that interest either goes back to your estate, and then now you're having to probate half of that estate, or if you put it as joint tenancy, then I think you've kind of cleared that up. But what a lot of people don't know, and the beneficiaries don't know, is that you have 9 months to accept that property. And if you do not do that, that interest reverts back to the estate. So let's say you have 3 kids, 2 of them file an affidavit, and the 3rd one does not within that 9-month period. That 1/3 interest on the house is going back into the estate, and now you're back into probate court.
Wow. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna shift because we're gonna come back to you. But I wanted to ask Angela, after hearing some of this from a financial standpoint, are there any tips, tricks, thoughts that families might face at end of life with their finances if they haven't set things up? Is that something to be aware of?
Definitely regularly check your beneficiaries on everything. Make sure that it's set up appropriately. Make sure that everyone who is listed is still living, or that it is, I'm not sure how I'm going to say that. Another mistake that I see people do is, depending on family situations, some people will think, hey, I'm just going to leave everything to my oldest son or my daughter because she handles everything, and then they'll distribute everything. That can cause lots of tax and legal problems for that beneficiary. So if you have multiple children, please list them all and the percentages that you want them to receive.
Okay.
And if you have children that you're worried about inheriting money for some reason, mental health, addiction, learning disability, anything that you're concerned about, like that's where Roberto comes in, and there's lots of things they can do to make sure that that child is still an inheritor and taken care of, but that inheriting finances don't do anything to disrupt any benefits or additional care that inheritor receives.
That's great. Great advice. And I think I'm reminded as you were talking, I know somebody I was talking to had a question, and I think it kind of relates in this, is that if you, maybe your circumstances have changed, you've had a spouse pass away, a child has preceded you in death, you had things set up financially, do you review, go back through and say, hey, this was my game plan, but do I need to make changes because there's tax implications now that there weren't? You were talking about maybe an adult child that's receiving something that they weren't anticipating, that kind of stuff. So should they sit back down with a financial advisor? And if they invested for themselves, can they still talk to somebody like you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you should be sitting down. If you have a financial professional, you should be sitting down. The role of a financial planner or a financial advisor should be to ask you about those things and advise you as things change. Retirement planning has changed 3 times in the last 6 years. The rules have changed, taxation has changed, and so what you did 10, 15 years ago might not be relevant anymore. So regularly reviewing those, I can even speak to that. We pay our house insurance and property tax out of a savings account. We don't have ours escrowed. So just last week, my husband said, hey, I opened a high interest savings account and I moved the insurance and tax money over. And I'm like, well, who's the beneficiary? He didn't put it in the trust. He didn't list the trust as the I have all the things, and I still found myself being like, you just have to constantly, but just be aware. Take inventory every now and then and double check those beneficiaries. I got him again on his work plan, his retirement plan. I'm the beneficiary, but he didn't have a contingent. He didn't have our trust. I have to watch him like a hawk. So just double check, no matter how good you are, just make a reminder to go back. The gift workshop is a great way to do that, going through, but even if you do the binder in the book, look through it once a year, whether it's in January with New Year's resolutions, just double check.
Yeah, that's really good.
Julie, I was going to say that why it's important to update your beneficiaries and always take a good look is that I had a probate case a couple of years ago where mom had created a trust, and if you don't know what a revocable living trust, I know we've said trust many times out here, right? So a revocable living trust is a legal entity that can hold title to all of your assets. And if it owns your assets, when you pass away, it does not go through probate court. So the only thing that goes through probate court is anything that's in your name individually. But I'm reminded of a case where mom created a trust, everything was in the trust, or the trust was listed as the beneficiary, but she forgot her life insurance policy. That was the only thing. And it was a $75,000 life insurance policy. It cost $4,000 to get it through probate to put it into the trust, right? So if you're not familiar with probate, anytime that I get a call now, I tell people to expect at least $4,500 to $5,000, if not more, all right? That's how much it costs to go through the court system, even if all you have is a $75,000 life insurance policy. Now, I also had a case in Lawton not too long ago where there were some medallions, and first time I heard about medallions. Their total value was $18,000, but the bank would not distribute to the only kid without a probate order. So he spent $4,000 to transfer the $18,000, right? So if you can avoid probate, please do so.
Yeah, so, and I know this is a hard question to ask, but I do think since we had some folks that maybe haven't done all the pre-planning and maybe they haven't set up the trust or the will, that kind of stuff, just generically, what's a range that it might cost to visit with you to set up a basic trust? Like they don't have lots of assets and all that, it's just a basic one. What would that be?
Generally, if you don't have your trust done, a lot of people don't have a will, or they only have a will. They also don't have their powers of attorneys. Right. So it's really going to be dependent on how much work they actually need and how much hand-holding they want. But I generally tell people it's going to cost you less than going through probate.
That's what I was trying to get at. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. It's you're going to pay it. On the front end or the back end, you're going to pay it. And maybe it's going to be your family that pays it because you didn't pay it, right? Mary, what you going to say?
Bring it to the bank. Like sometimes lawyers will send it over and say, hey, contact your customer. They just did a trust with me. I have some that will do that. Some won't. So you've got to know, because if you build it and you say, oh, these things are in my trust, but you never put them in there.
Right.
Then you're back in probate.
You are back in probate. And I tell people that when you come and work with us, estate planning is a 3-step process. Step 1 is when people actually get to the point where they're wanting to have that discussion about putting an estate plan together, right? Step 2 is when we get the work completed. We get everything signed. And a lot of people stop right there.
Right.
And when we give them back their binder with all their documents, we say, okay, step 3 is the most important one, because you just made a huge investment in putting all this paperwork together. Now you have to get everything into the trust. So if you can think of a trust this way, when you sign your trust agreement, you basically bought yourself a moving van, all right? And let's say you're living currently in your home, you have this moving van out in the driveway. And now you're planning on moving somewhere else. As life happens, you're going to move to different places. You need to put the stuff in that moving van, because if you drive away and you don't put it in there, it's going to stay in its original place. All right, that process of putting it into the moving van is what I call funding, which is just retitling your assets. Some assets can be owned by the trust during your lifetime, and some assets are going to happen after you pass away. Right? So your life insurance, for example, you're going to update your beneficiaries to be the trust. And so we sit down and we ask a lot of personal information. We want to know what your assets are so that we can help you move all your stuff into that moving van.
Yeah, that's really great. That's super. Okay, so I want to pivot just a little bit. I know you were telling me about, I think there was a house, and it had basically the worth of the house. They spent almost half of that, right? Do you remember that story?
I do remember that story.
Because I thought it was really compelling, so maybe...
Probate's gone wrong. I feel like I should have
That's another session, right?
And so what happened is, this is what happens when kids don't get along, right? Basically, mom passed away. It's a house in Moore. It's a $175,000 house. We get a call, and both of them come in, and I meet with both of them, and they're wanting to probate the house. And I say, great, let's get this started. A week later, the sister just loses it, and now she doesn't want to sell the house. Well, we represent the son, the brother, and we file for a petition. He gets appointed to act on behalf of his mom's estate. He doesn't want to co-own this property with his sister. His sister's a drug addict. She's living in a home. And he basically told her, either you buy me out of my half or we're going to sell the house. She couldn't afford it. She lived in the home with her mom, but didn't have a job. And so, fast forward to the end, we did force to sell the house. We did evict the sister, and essentially, when all was said and done, the house sold for $160,000. So that's all that's being split between these two. He paid us about $25,000. She hired her own attorney. Sorry, not bought, but hired her own attorney, and probably spent about $20,000. So in total, it was about $45,000 in attorney's fees for a $160,000 estate.
So, oh boy, go ahead.
I was just going to say that where I kind of come in as an advisor, there are different ways that people work with me. Some people I manage their money, some people I have more of a strategic relationship where I look for opportunities like that. And then there is like full financial planning, which is a kind of a different level of a relationship. But when you go through that, I review bank accounts, titling, in health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, their estate plan, their powers of attorney, and I bring in other professionals to make sure that we've gone through all those contingencies. So there's different levels of advisors and what you're looking for, and so just vet your professionals, find someone that you're comfortable with talking about these things. I know especially there were generations who didn't talk about money. It just wasn't something that happened in their family. But these things have just gotten so complicated that if you don't want to talk to your children, that's fine. A lot of times I guide those conversations with my clients, and I respect their wishes about what they want them to know and what they don't want them to know. And we kind of have those conversations of, I know you don't want them to know X, Y, and Z, but they really need to know about this. So can we just start addressing this piece so that when this comes up, we can go through those things. And I often tell my clients, especially, I don't want to meet your kids at your funeral.
Right, yeah. And I think that kind of points back a little bit to Mary when we had our initial prep call. You said something that was really powerful, is know what you want and don't be scared to have hard conversations, because it's going to cost you if you don't. I mean, that's really the bottom line. If you don't have these conversations, what did we say at the beginning? If people don't have information, what do? Fill in the blanks. So if we don't provide them with information, they don't know even where to start. So having those conversations are good, right? Roberto, anything you want to add to that as far as that goes?
Yeah, I think that for me, I think Angela has alluded to it, is that you don't want to necessarily leave everything to one person to then distribute. Yeah. Put all the pressure on that one individual. And I know we talked about decision makers, right? And so this is where we want to make sure that those people that you trust, that you believe are going to carry out your wishes, are actually going to carry it out. I don't know how many times I've sat in my conference room in my office and the family and saying, well, our brother or sister was appointed the personal representative of the estate, but they're not wanting to take action, right? And so now the others are dependent on them, and now you're basically going to have to fight it out in court. And so having good discussions as to what's going to happen when I pass away, because you truly do not know what's going to happen or how someone's going to react to death until that time actually comes. And again, in the conference room, I don't know how many times I've heard, I just can't believe that person is acting that way. We never thought that they would be the holdout, right? Everyone grieves differently, and you don't really know how you're going to react until you lose that loved one.
Right.
And I will say, I have several estates tied up in probate now where we did have family meetings. All the kids were there. Kids acted like everything was completely fine with mom and dad. And when they did pass, everything changed. So now it's contested. And so you really don't know. That's one of the things where I think seeing some of the things I saw working in hospitals and seeing how people behave in crisis situations makes for a better planner, because you plan for plan A, B, C, and D, and then you ask questions to make sure, well, what if this happens, but not that? What if that happens, but not this? And walk through different scenarios with the professionals you're working with, so that you know that really what your wishes were is really what's going to happen.
That's excellent advice. And I think I would add to that, it's not always death. We've talked a lot about when people die, but there are some things that could just be a health situation that changes someone's capacity, but they're still living. Whether that's an accident, or it's maybe cognitive. I mean, there's a variety of things, right, that could be a deal like that. So if we have, Mary, I'm going to ask you a question. If you had somebody that came into the bank, and we didn't talk about this, so if I'm putting you on the spot, just say I don't have an answer, that's okay. But if you had somebody that came to the bank and they have been a long-time customer, but maybe they were doing some things that were not typical, what do you guys do? How do you handle that?
So we really, I work at a community bank, so we really try to know our customers. We know their kids, their grandkids. So sometimes you get those gut feelings and it's like something's not right. So if there is someone else on the account, you may slip away and call them and be like, hey, is everything okay? If someone's not, we actually have a form, because we're like, you know, and our CEO is wonderful. She'll sit down. I've heard her before and she's like, I really don't think you should send this wire. You know, we're looking at things and try to walk through and explain to the person maybe why this seems very fishy, like someone's trying to take your money. I know that there's actually, I went to an Oklahoma Bankers event at the Capitol recently, and I heard they're trying to put something in place where you can designate, we could designate someone where if something does feel wrong, the bank could call. So I really hope that gets passed.
I love that.
Because then it's like if something seems off or somebody's threatening you,
Right.
we can have someone to call. So hopefully that will pass. Because I think that would protect all of us. With AI now, I think you have to be very careful too when people are calling in. You know, we're asking for passcodes now.
Right.
You might get mad when you call your banker that knows you really well. But we're just trying to keep you safe.
Yeah, we have what's called a trusted contact.
Okay.
So people can list a trusted contact, whereas if I'm getting suspicious that something is off or doesn't feel right, or I can't get a hold of them, right? Like they always answer the phone, and I'm like, my goodness, this is unusual. I can get permission to reach out to that person. I can't discuss their finances. They can't make decisions about that person's account, but I can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of so-and-so and they're not answering. Or, have you noticed something strange? And I can reach out. Most of the time it's people's kids, but I've caught, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 scams. To the point we actually have the ability in financial services, if we feel something's really wrong, even after we talk to the person, even after we investigate it, if the person is of their right mind but still being manipulated, we can freeze their accounts for a certain amount of time. And so that's just something that is available. That would be, you know, that's the difference in working with a local person who knows you, your family, and your spending habits compared to a 1-800 number.
Sure.
They're going to pick up on that a lot faster. This is just really unusual behavior.
Roberto, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a plan in place before something happens.
Yes.
Right, so
That's
that's
good.
where I talked about the powers of attorney and having those in place. Because if you don't have those in place and you have to ask for guardianship now over a parent or over a loved one, again, now you're going to probate court but for the purpose of a guardianship, and you're going to spend at least $3,000 to get somebody appointed that you could have appointed through a power of attorney. And a lot of times we use the accident example, right? Now someone doesn't have the mental capacity to name a power of attorney, but sometimes it's just getting older and we start losing our mental capacity. And I had a consult a couple of years ago where the daughter set it up and brought her parents in. And as we're talking, the daughter was dominating the conversation. And so I had my concerns. Now I've gotten older and a little more bold, so I asked her to step out. And she kind of did this little number, but she stepped out. So now I'm talking to the husband and wife. Now the husband's dominating the conversation. And so I asked him to step out, which is really hard because he was 80-something and I respect my elders. But he stepped down and I was left with the spouse. And it took me 10 seconds to realize that she didn't know where she was at, right? So I could have just allowed the daughter to navigate the process, but, you know, in that case, it's not going to be her wishes, right? It's going to be whatever the daughter wants, and there was other siblings. I don't know ultimately what she would have wanted, but I told them, I can't do a joint estate plan for them because she doesn't have the mental capacity to make her own decisions. And so I referred them at that point to a guardianship attorney friend that I had at that time. Now we actually do guardianships at our firm. So, you know, but you're talking about $3,000 there. You're talking about $5,000 for probate. That starts to add up real quick.
Right, sure.
And that's, I think, the most dangerous situation that Mary and I both see is when someone, you didn't do the planning, and now we're at that point, we have to wait till the guardianship. That money is locked up. They're the only, if it's a retirement account, it's an individual retirement account without a power of attorney or a bank account that was only in their name, we have to wait for the guardianship because we can't take instructions from someone that we know is not able to make those decisions.
Right.
Yeah, I want to share something. Recently, we had a mom that had a disabled son. She'd trust everything was set up.
Mm-hmm.
But if she became ill and wasn't going to be able to keep doing things, she was the representative payee.
Oh gosh.
So when she passed, his money was frozen. I knew who the trust went to, I knew all that. Look the person in the eyes, I'm like, I want to help you, but you've got to go become the representative. I can't, it's locked up. So then the disabled person didn't have the funds that they needed. So you want to think about all of that. If you're, you know, if you have a child, you know, what's the succession for that?
Right.
You're starting to do bad. It's time to have someone take over before.
Right. Yeah, and everybody has said this, and I will say this, you know, being proactive and doing it before there's a crisis, before you start seeing a decline in health, all of those things, because we aren't promised tomorrow. And this isn't just an age thing. This is a life thing. So it could be a car accident. It could be anything. It could, you know, so it's important.
And just review those documents,
Yeah.
because I had new to me clients, and so they were older, they came in with their kids, and I asked them if they had an estate plan. Yes, we have an estate plan. I'm like, can you bring me your power of attorney? Can you bring me this? They bring it in, no big deal. Well, I looked, the only person that, it was a springing power of attorney, which meant there had to be, you had to prove documentation before the kids could make the decisions. And the only person who could declare them mentally incompetent was their local doctor 40 years ago in Weatherford, Oklahoma, who died 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
So review those things. You'd be shocked at what we find.
You can't make this stuff up, right?
No, you can't. And I think that that's where sitting down with somebody who does this day in, day out. Obviously, you know, Angela does a lot of financial planning, and there's areas that she likes to work with and really specialize in. You know, there's a lot of types of attorneys, and it may have been that the attorney that created that document also practiced family law,
Right.
and he's like, oh, I can just do a simple POA.
Right.
Right, so working with an attorney that specializes in this area, because the stories that I have here, that I'm told here, are because of personal experiences that my firm has gone through, right? And there's a family attorney out there that thinks he can just create a simple POA, but doesn't know what questions to ask as a result of the things that, you know, like I've gone through. And so now I'm a little more diligent in asking questions, just so I can avoid probate if at all possible.
I 100% agree, and I will say the analogy that was told to me, and I thought it was pretty brilliant, was if you have something wrong with your eye, are you going to go to a knee guy? Right? I mean, you're going to go to the person that specializes in eyes, right? So that's why they specialize. They took extra classes. They know their stuff. So, okay, so we've got some information up here on, and I want to make sure we've covered everything. So, ask yourself, what do I want to have happen? And here's the deal, husbands and wives, do we always agree? I don't know about y'all, but at our house, that's not always the case. So, it's okay if you've got different sheets, and you may have to figure out a compromise on a few things, but don't just assume that your spouse wants the same thing you do. You guys have conversations, right? And then also, how does my decision, and I put or lack thereof, impact those around me? I had a lovely father-in-law that I love so much, and his claim to us was, well, it won't matter to me, I'm dead. I won't be here, so it's up to you. You guys figure it out. It's not my problem. But some of his decisions or lack of decisions did impact us, so we had to figure that out. And that's where the probate stuff comes in, right? Like it does impact folks in a negative way. Or not setting up the financial planning, you don't realize it's going to impact them in a negative way because you're trying to leave a legacy and don't realize that you're actually causing them more burden. So, and then confirming that your loved ones know what you want and that they feel equipped. That's a really big one. In our industry, we see families come in and they do have the power of attorney, and it was the oldest daughter that was assigned because she's the oldest daughter or whatever. But she's going through a crazy life situation, dealing with cancer, a divorce, a kid, whatever it is, right? And she doesn't have the capacity to deal with what's going on, and things get delayed because she doesn't have the capacity to do it, right? So not mental capacity, but just emotional capacity. So you're not always going to know, but having a successor identified, you want to add on to that a little bit? Or?
Well, yeah, I think that for me, I have conversations with husbands and wives, and families are different. The siblings do not always get along, right? And so let's say you name the oldest child because they're the oldest. Are they really the most responsible? If they don't get along with their siblings, what's going to happen there, right? Are they going to go into court and fight over what's left in the trust? I've seen that happen before. So when you sit down, maybe instead of choosing one of the kids, maybe you want to choose someone who's independent, right? And are they going to get compensated? Or do you want to have a corporate trustee, a company that can serve in that capacity, who's more of a, they deal with this, obviously they're professional, they deal with this day in and day out, and they're not going to have the emotional attachment that the children would have. So I think that, like you said there, do they feel equipped? Does that person who's taking over, do they feel like they have the ability to carry that out in a way that their feelings are not going to get brought in?
Right.
But that top one, what do I want to happen, right? I think that that's one of the biggest things is when I sat down with a family about a year ago, it was March of last year, I asked them, I said, okay, we're here. You've got $3 million in your estate. What do you want to happen? And without hesitation, they said, we don't want our kids to get our stuff. $3 million. So I said, okay, where do you want it to go? And they said, all to charity. And so we set that up, right? 3 kids, had they been in contact with their parents in the last 18 years, maybe they would have gotten something. But they did not, right? And I followed up in July because the wife passed away. And I asked him how he was doing. He says, not good, obviously, when you've been married 50, 60 years and you lose the love of your life. It's a struggle at that point. And I said, did the kids come to the funeral? And he said no, right? And he did say, if they had, I think that she would have been rolling over in her grave. So, and good thing that we got this in place before she passed away, right? So that they would not get anything. And that's what they wanted to happen. And every family is different. I had the situation where I was working with a commercial pilot, multiple millions in their retirement account, and I said, your 2 kids are in their early 20s. If you were to pass away right now, they get it immediately when you pass away. Are you okay with that? And he says, yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to be dead. I don't care what happens after I pass away. That exact comment, right? But I had a doctor come in about 1.5 years ago, and what brought her in is her husband died in a car accident 2 months earlier. And she says, I've got a 1-year-old to now take care of. And they were both doctors, so in their late 30s, they had built up almost $4 to $5 million. And she said, I don't want my 1-year-old when he turns 18, if something happens to me before that age, inheriting that much money. Because you could imagine what an 18-year-old is going to do with $5 million plus, you're talking about years and years of interest.
Right.
So I think it's good, like, what do you want that to look like? So for her, yeah, she wanted to provide him $1 million when he turned 18. There was still a lot left over that he was going to get over the course of the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's important too, when you want to happen, is also for tax planning.
Mm-hmm.
Tax planning is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. I work with a lot, like leaving money to charity. If you have retirement accounts that are qualified, which means they were tax deferred when they went in. Where you put different beneficiaries can make a big difference on taxation to inheritance. So if you do want to leave money to charity, we leave portions of things because it goes tax deferred to that charity. There's no income tax on it. If you're over 70 and a half and you give to charities, or you donate, you pay tithes to your church, we can do what's called qualified charitable distributions, and it goes from your IRA to your church tax-free. So there's lots of things that can go into that on which assets need to go in which category. And that's where, I work with CPAs, I work with estate attorneys, different banks on what do you want to happen? What is important to you? Where does your money go now? Are there more efficient ways to do that than we're already doing that? So just having those conversations and finding a person that you're comfortable disclosing that kind of information to is very, very important.
That's really great. Mary, anything that you've been thinking about? I don't want you to feel like you didn't add to it, but is there anything that kind of relates as far as families go or anything like that?
I love what you guys are saying too. There are lots of lawyers, there are lots of banks, there are lots of financial planners. If you meet with one and you don't click, go try another one. I cannot emphasize that enough.
That's right.
And if you're a couple, you both need to feel like, okay, I feel connected.
Yeah, that's really true. That's very true. Okay, so we're gonna, the other thing I put on that slide was, do I need help getting things in order or addressed? Guys, this is like a personal trainer. I mean, think about it. We all know we're supposed to exercise, but sometimes we just need somebody, right? We need somebody to come alongside us. We may need, like with the gift, we have guest professionals that are there and available to answer questions and give you direction. Back to our elephant example, you can only take it one bite at a time, right? So it's a lot to do. And so if you need to get help getting those things in order, whether it's working with a financial planner or an attorney, or taking a gift and then taking that to the attorney or to the financial planner, I will tell you it will make it go a lot faster and it's a lot cheaper because you already got a lot of it already done. So you've done some of your homework ahead of time, and that does help kind of expedite things, so that's a good thing. So we want to try to be good stewards of our finances, right? Okay, I'm having to advance up. We're having some tech issues today, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so,
Julie, if I may, don't rely on AI.
Yeah, please. Oh my gosh, yes.
And I
So
say
glad you
that,
said that.
I saw a post by an attorney asking a question, and somebody responded, and they cited a statute in the Oklahoma statute, and I looked at it and I was like, I don't ever remember seeing that. And I know I've been busy over the last year, but I would have known if that law was passed. And so I went on to ChatGPT and asked that same question, and ChatGPT gave me that answer, and I'm like, wait a moment. So I went to the the statutes themselves, and that section was not there. ChatGPT had made up a statute, and this attorney had copied and pasted the answer onto the message board. And I was like, I wanted to say something publicly to him, but I didn't want to stir the pot. So another attorney did and just said, with all due respect, I think you're wrong. But even attorneys use AI, and they're supposed to know the law, and I think that That was a very embarrassing moment.
I'm really glad that you said that because it's real tempting to do, and you know, maybe the answer is right, maybe it's not. But how are we going to know? Because we're not professionals, we don't study the law. So, which is why I wanted you here today, honestly, because I mean, we could come up with stuff and answer some things, but we don't know the legal implications because we're not lawyers. So I'm really glad that you shared that. That's really important. Okay. So if you guys have questions, I want you to go ahead and kind of jot some down and pass them up, and we're going to start going through those. But I wanted to, it's really important to us that you don't just come and listen, that you have some action steps and things that you can do in the next 30 days that you can do this, right? So I know that we didn't really talk about it, and Roberto, you can add to this, but creating an inventory asset, like of your assets, knowing what all those are. And I put on there just starting with big things, your house, your car, you know. And I say that because when I asked my uncle to list his assets, he got very overwhelmed. He's got a lot of art, and he's got collected like musical instruments that are, you know, worth money and all that. He thought I was talking about those assets, which we need those too. But just start with the big things, right? Is any add to that at all, or?
I think that even just starting with a list, you're going to get asset information if you go in and talk to an attorney, right? Like I mentioned earlier, step 3 of the estate planning process is where we take those assets and you start changing the titles, changing the beneficiaries. And that can be like a very overwhelming experience. I mean, even myself, when I sat down and we listed out our assets, I got everything done, I thought. And then a year later, I'm sitting there during Christmas and I'm like, I don't remember if I updated the beneficiaries on my life insurance. And I logged on and I was like, I did not, right? So I needed to go back to my matrix that I had, and I had not checked that off.
Yeah.
Right, so it just makes that process so much easier when you list everything out beforehand, because you're going to need that information. And so the greatest thing is you set it up, and then you're going to remember later on. It's like, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. So then you're just filling in the smaller things.
Do any of you know if there is a place that you can go online to search for policies and as beneficiary? Is there? Did I make that up? Is that a thing?
Life insurance, it's
Okay.
NAIC, National, that's what it is. You can search for life insurance policies with their name and social security number. So you can see if there's any, because I get a lot of people are like, I think my parents got me a policy, but they don't have the information, and so we can search that.
Schedule a family meeting, and please don't make it Easter Sunday for brunch or Thanksgiving or whatever. Like, yes, everyone's going to be together, and that seems like a natural time to take care of it, but I would really highly recommend not doing it then because everybody's just going to be in the wrong frame of mind. So with our family, we just set a date and a location, and I even created an agenda so that it removes the emotion from it. Honestly, if you can just come from a pragmatic, this is just a hard conversation, we're going to have it, and we're going to rip off the Band-Aid, and this is what we're going to discuss, and if we need to add anything to the agenda, we can, but it just keeps us on track so we don't bunny trail. And then consider meeting with a professional for a consultation. Do you guys do consultations? Is that something we can do? Can we schedule an appointment to say, hey, we're not sure if we want to interview with you?
I think, to me, it's, whether you work with our firm or work with another law firm, I just say get good help, get good, competent help. Like you said, if you have an eye problem, you want to go to the knee doctor. So just find someone to help you through that process. Because I always tell people, if you want the cheapest work, just go online, right? You can go online and get a will.
Yeah.
But if you want someone to help guide you, who's going to be able to educate you and give you your choices, then I think that's where you want to seek the services of a professional.
Mary, I think you said that was really brilliant. She said if it's a simple solution or you avoid it, it's going to cost you more in the end. So I thought that was really good. So, okay, so we've got some questions for you guys. You ready? All right. If I'm added as a joint owner to my parents' bank account and they're sued, am I also liable? That sounds like a Roberto question, but maybe a Mary question, maybe both. Weigh in.
You go first.
That can be scary.
Okay.
Like if your child has a levy put on them, if they're a joint owner, they own it too.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say your child, so if you add your child and your child gets sued, then your parents could lose that bank account because they added you to that account, right? So, because it's your money too.
Okay.
And I've also seen it though, I had a phone call one time where that joint owner, that child, depleted what was in the account and now left mom with nothing, right? So that happens too because they're a joint owner at that point.
Now I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, not on here, but if the account is a trust, would they still be able to be sued?
So
if they're
with a revocable living trust, yes,
Okay.
because it's not an asset protection trust.
Okay.
Asset protection trusts are irrevocable, meaning that they cannot be changed once created,
Okay.
or it's extremely difficult to change that. The revocable aspect is that you can change it at any time, right? So for me, I've got my 3 kids that are going to inherit everything right now, but if one of them decides that he doesn't want to call his mother, you know, I will advise that maybe we want to write that kid out. So we can make those changes.
I brought you into this world, I can take you out kind of thing. All right. Any recommendations on maybe how to navigate that? Is there anything that they could do that would allow them to help their parent but not be put in a place where they're potentially liable?
So I think that, you know, when it comes to a trust account, let's say, and we want to protect the parents from the child getting sued, right? I think that that's where we don't put them as a co-trustee necessarily, but like you were talking about, you can name them as a, I forget that, deputy, right?
Deputy, okay.
And that way, you separate some of that liability,
Okay.
right, from that. But, you know, and I want to make sure I answer the question,
Sure.
is that if the child's added as a joint owner, but the parents get sued,
that was the question.
okay, yeah, then that child, their only liability is going to be limited to that bank account, not to
their personal account.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, so.
Okay. Gotcha. And then, Mary, if they were a deputy, would that change anything? Would they still have the same risk?
They're just an authorized signer then.
Okay.
So if you have a joint account, maybe you don't want them to be joined on there if you're worried if they do something silly. Or their
vice versa.
spouse and they're connected. You could just make them an authorized signer and payable in death if you don't have a trust.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully that answered that question. Okay. Where can we get a transfer on death form for our homes? That's the first question. Is that a form?
I think the county clerks have them.
Okay.
But I often have seen where they're not filled out correctly.
Okay.
And that creates a whole nother slew of problems.
Does
And
the
so,
title of the house have something to do with that? Like who the house is titled to?
sometimes it's just not notarized. I've seen it not
Okay.
notarized. Another thing with transfer on death deeds, and I had a gentleman who got one from a gentleman at our church, and I knew that this gentleman was passing away. And I asked him, I said, have you recorded that transfer on death deed?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, no, I've got it at home. And I'm like, well, if he passes away before you record that, then that transfer on death deed is not valid. And guess what he did? Straight after that meeting, he went straight to the county clerk and recorded that deed. The gentleman passed away 2 days later.
Wow.
So I saved our church, because our church was the beneficiary of that. I saved our church $4,000.
Oh my gosh.
Just with that little simple tip, right? But oftentimes, whether it may not be signed correctly, the legal description is not correct, or the grantors are not listed correctly. So, again, you've got the paperwork, you can go online and do it, but are you doing it correctly? And that's where that professional comes in. So if you go to an attorney, they'll be able to draft it and make sure that it's done, and then they take the liability of making sure that it's done correctly.
Okay. Got a second question here. Do you recommend adding per stirrups? No? Yeah. On your beneficiaries if they should pass away? Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so per stirpes,
Yeah,
that term, right? So that means if you've got 3 kids and one of them passes away, that 1/3 would go to any beneficiaries that they have, any kids that they have,
Okay.
right? And so if that's the way that you want it to flow down, then yes, you would want to do per stirpes.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's a per capita, there's a couple different other ways, but per stirpes means that you're accounting for that 1/3 share should that beneficiary die before you do.
Okay, very good. All right, why does a will have to go through probate, but a trust doesn't?
So a will has to be found valid to be found valid by the judge. All right, so I think that's the easiest illustration is that going back to that probate that I had, right? What had happened in that situation was surviving girlfriend went on freewill.com a month after the dad passed away. She created a profile for herself and for him. This is all public record in the probate, which can be accessed, so I can speak to it now. She created a profile for herself and for him, naming her as the sole beneficiary of all his assets. She printed it off, and she signed it on, she forged his name, she forged the notary, and the witnesses. And she got an attorney, and the attorney provided a copy of that to the court. So at the hearing, when we were contesting, the judge said, on its face, this will looks valid. And I said, we have suspicion. So we were able to get a statement from freewill.com. There were general counsel saying, yes, that is our input. Their engineer gave us data history where she went on and created these profiles. And then the notary signed a statement saying, I did not notarize that will. And so that's how we were able to prove that the will was fake. So until a judge finds that to be valid, that will is not valid. And the only way you're going to get that in front of a judge is to open up the probate.
Okay. And then if it's in a trust, it doesn't have to go through probate because it's been...
It's like creating a business. It's
okay.
a legal entity,
okay.
right?
Gotcha.
And so through our process, going back to that husband and wife where the wife didn't have the mental capacity, up until that point where you signed the paperwork, my staff and I are always assessing whether or not you've got the mental capacity to sign that document.
Mm-hmm.
And we take that very, very seriously. I had an estate plan where I created up in Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
and she had dementia, or if I forget the exact term of what she had, but in the mornings, she was lucid. She had the mental capacity. In the afternoon, it was, she would have trouble. So we drove up there first thing, we went through all the documents, she said yes, and right before we signed, I said, okay, do you have any children? And she said no. Well, we got a call from the sole daughter who I went to high school with. And there for a moment, I was like, oh no, like she doesn't have the mental capacity right now. And she said, and then she hesitated for a second, and then said, except my daughter. And I said, okay, she realizes
Mm-hmm.
that she has a child, right? And I've got 2 witnesses who are, seeing her response.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to proceed and create this trust at that point.
That's good. Yeah, we kind of did the same thing with my dad. We knew his wishes, but we had to have some changes made, and he was able to articulate that before he got too far gone. So, okay, question: can Edward Jones financial advisors serve as estate planners? Is that a service that you guys do?
No.
Okay.
I am not an attorney, so I work with local attorneys or with your trusted preferred attorney to make sure that we get everything titled. I go with my clients to a lot of those meetings. We sit down, we go through it, and it actually makes the process a lot of times a lot quicker because the attorney and I are in the same room,
right,
and we hear the same thing in the same way to make sure that then when we go to fund or to change beneficiaries after the estate plan is done, that it gets done correctly and that we all heard the same information.
Great. So this is not a situation where it's your cardiologist doesn't talk to your orthopedic and okay. Good. That's good. Okay. The more questions I have get to be the questions. Let's see, I have, get to be more expensive. How do we reduce cost and still get enough services for my needs? Okay, that's a great question. If you're limited in income and you're concerned about the expense, I'm going to let you guys weigh in, but I will say, and I've had this shared with me by others, if you do go through the gift class and you fill out that information, then you're going to have the opportunity to cut down the time, because a lot of the information's in the book. So that is helpful. But if you guys want to weigh in.
So I didn't get to take it yet, but I'm sure the bank will do it again soon. A lot of the employees at the bank chose to provide the gift program to us.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Because it doesn't, I have some friends that were in their 40s that died within the last year. So you need to get your kids to do this too. It's very important.
Absolutely.
But I started saying that and then I left. But it's going to walk you through the questions. So that's going to jog your brain a lot. So when you do come in to see someone like Roberto, you're already going to have been thinking about those things. So it isn't going to take as long when they come in to see you guys, because they're going to kind of have semi-roadmap. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I think it's going to make the process quicker and smoother, and actually going to allow you to take action, right? Because I think when you're confused, I think that's where you start hesitating in situations
Still
like
second
that.
guessing or decision overload. Yeah.
Right. I think that for us, as far as from a legal standpoint, if every law firm is different. A lot of people work on an hourly model. We do our estate plans on a flat fee model, right? So it doesn't matter if you've got 5 questions or 20 questions.
Right.
We're going to have multiple planning sessions with people to make sure we flush out all those questions. And then when you think you're done, then we're going to play it out some more, right? Because we do want to, what do you want to happen, right? Going back to that first bullet point on the previous slide. If you have a child with special needs and they're on governmental benefits, how do you want to address that? You don't want them to get kicked off, right? So we want to make sure to address that situation they're provided for while they're living, but once they pass away, where do you want it to go? If your children die, do you want it to go to your grandchildren? Some people decide they don't want to, right? They want it to go to the living children. So we do play out a lot of situations because we definitely want to keep asking questions. So I think what you'll find is that if you're working on a thought, you tend to answer a lot more than before.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I learned a lot today. I hope you guys did too. And I would love to give our esteemed panel a round of applause. Please fill out your surveys. As we said, we're giving away a gift seat, so that's really great. And you can even pick which day you do it or which session you want to go to. So we'd love to do that for you. If this was your first visit, please write down where you heard about us, because we'd love to know that too. And invite your friends when you come back in April. We're going to talk about insurance, because I don't know about you, but that's a really big topic. and thank you to you guys. They're going to be kind of mingling over here for a few minutes, so if you guys have some personal questions you didn't want to send up front, you're welcome to come over and chat. Thanks again.